Well, yesterday's announcement is getting reactions from the whole country. Now, one of the things that Alan Kyeremanten said when he made that speech was, and I quote, "The party has been hijacked by a selected group of party leaders and elders, government appointees, behind the curtain power brokers, and some unscrupulous party apparatchiks." He says that he doesn't recognize the party he joined all those years ago. Do you identify what Alan Kyeremanten seems to be describing here?
I think this is something he himself should have noticed long ago. When we had our Congress in Tamale years ago. Immediately after the Congress, the then so-called leadership saw to the dismissal of the national chairman of the party, the junior secretary of the party, and also the second vice chairman, the second vice national chairman of the party. These three people were sacked. I came in to protest vehemently. And as a result of that, I was also written a letter that I had been suspended indefinitely. Where was Alan then? Where was he at that time? You see, when you have a group of people who always want to protect themselves, and they wouldn't like to come out to say truth to power, you find it difficult to defend them when they themselves are in crisis. And that is what we are seeing.
Now, his path that he seeks to chart is quite clear. He wants to be president. What do you think this breaking away will do to the fortunes of the NPP in the next election?
Oh, definitely it will have effect on them.
Okay, what sort of effect do you evaluate that it will have? Right, I think we may have lost connection with. There we are.
Hello.
Yes. I was wondering if you could tell us what do you think the effect will be on the NPP?
Oh, I said definitely it will have a tremendous effect on the NPP. There's no doubt about that.
Okay. How do you evaluate this effect? What do you think will happen? Okay. You'll have to forgive us. We're having some difficulty.
And we are not careful. We shall definitely walk back to 1979. That is my view.
Right. Well, that's quite drastic. 1979.
It is. His move really is a move that will definitely bring a big problem to the party. You see, he made mentions of certain things. Who are those few people? Alan should be bold. You see, the problem with him is that he's not bold. I remember 4 or 5 months ago, and I have it on tape because I spoke with either Metro or I think TV3 or even your own station. When they asked me a question about the succession plan, and I told them that Alan could have been a better person if he had resigned from cabinet and government some months back. Because he's aware. He can't tell me that he wasn't aware. He is very much aware. He was aware at that time of all the infractions and the thievery that was going on in the government. But he didn't say a word. No, he's a person, as of now, I respect him a lot for his credibility, if I'll say so. You follow me? But Alan should be bold and talk. That exactly is his problem. So if he had been bold, he wouldn't even years back have stepped down for Akufo-Addo. Even though I was then supporting Akufo-Addo. You follow me? And if you want to be a leader, you must be bold. He knows all the problems we have in the party. He's aware of them. There's a party leadership full of selfishness, incompetence. We see it, we know it. Arrogance and greed and tribalism. This is what is killing NPP now. I have been in the party right from the onset. I knew Alan, I know Alan when he was a young man. It's not my age group. And I know the role they played, not himself alone, including the Osage and others. And Maximilian, who unfortunately has died. He didn't benefit anything from this party. So if you are left and you must be strong. And that is exactly what Alan lacked. And that is what has brought us to where we are today.
We're talking with Dr. Nyaho Nyaho Tamakloe. We're assessing the impact of Alan's announcement yesterday to resign from the NPP and to run as an independent candidate in the next election for president. Now, Dr. Nyaho Nyaho Tamakloe, you called recently on the former president, Kufuor, to step in as a unifying force in the NPP. Do you think if that had happened, it might have prevented this outcome of Alan's quitting the party?
No, I call him to step in when we have all this sort of crisis in the country, the police against the youth, and also, the nation is in crisis. There's no doubt of it. So I keep on saying it. And I said that because Kufuor is listened to a lot by young people in my own party, and I would say quite a large group of members of our party listen to Kufuor. And a word from Kufuor is taken seriously. That's why I called on him to speak when the police were then brutalizing our children and grandchildren. You follow me? And I'm quite sure if Kufuor decides today to address the nation on what is happening, we might have some peace. Because there are a lot of people in this country who really respect what he says. That's why I called on him. And not just on him, I called on the religious leaders in this country. Boko, I remember when I was a young man in the military years ago and I was in detention. He was then a reverend father. A young man who had just, I think, joined the Catholic Church as a minister. He used to come and pray to us. He was even editing the Catholic Standard in those days. Now, what has happened now that he has become so quiet? What is happening? These are the people who should talk to the nation. Let us see them address the nation. You follow me? So also is the chief imam. The chief imam is a powerful person in this country. He should come and address the nation. This nation is in crisis. I'm saying it, and you guys will be surprised. It will happen if nothing is done about it. If nothing is done about it. So this is my position.
Now, Alan wants to be president. He's going to run as an independent. Can he win?
No. No. No again. Now, what even interested me was the fact that he was calling on the youth of Ghana. See, the movement belongs to the youth. Now, if you had mind for the youth, they would have seen it long ago. Even when the youth was attacked recently, did they come out to say anything? No. When that young man, Voma, if I get his name right, was attacked and put in prison. He was a cabinet minister. What do you say about it? I was compelled to ask Kandapa to be very careful with such a person. Because if you see a young man in the front line of politics behaving this way, don't think he's alone. He has a mass behind him. And I think Kandapa, whether he listens to me or not, I really don't care. Because none of them listen to anybody. All they know is that they put communicators, so-called communicators, on the various into the various media houses to defend the wrong. Our party was not like this. The party of B.J. Darocha was not like this. No. No again. And as I speak now, all the senior people in the party, the elderly people in the party, they are mute. I mean, what is happening? That we have allowed Akufo-Addo to run this country as his own personal property. How? How can a despot run the NPP? It's impossible. The party itself says it was the motto of the party is development and freedom. Without freedom, there's no NPP.
Why do you think the elders are mute?
I don't know. You can call some of them. They are there. They are all over there. Call some of them, find out from them, especially those in Kumasi.
We're talking to Dr.
Most of them are quite my seniors, though. But I know they can talk. The only person who has been speaking is Kwame PNA. He's the only one. He's the only one who has been speaking. All the others said they have kept quiet. They know the reason why. I'm not afraid of Akufo-Addo. No. Because Akufo-Addo made me understood that the fight for this country is a fight for freedom. And that was why I was close to him. And I've seen that he himself doesn't believe in freedom. So if he believes in freedom, we shan't be where we are today.
We're talking to Dr. Nyaho Nyaho Tamakloe. We're getting his reactions to Alan Kyeremanten's announcement of two things yesterday. First, that he's resigning from the NPP. Second, that he's seeking to run as an independent candidate for presidency in the next election. Dr. Nyaho Nyaho Tamakloe, let's talk about what led Alan to this decision. He points to how the superdelegates election went down. He talks about vote buying and influencing having caused the outcome that we saw. You are close to those at the center of your party. How do you assess that exercise? How do you think the NPP conducted themselves in that superdelegate election?
Unfortunately, I have not been very active. But I'm supposed to be a suspended member of the party. I say they damn it. No, none of them can sack me from that party. None of them. None of them. I say it again. Otherwise, this country will shake. Now, the point is, I don't know much about how the superdelegate itself was put in place. Now, if you claim that the superdelegates what do you call it? A procedure was not done properly. You are a very senior member of the party. I'm talking about Alan, very senior member of the party. You have every right to put your foot down and say, no, we are not going back by your dictate. Secondly, you talk about vote buying, which to me is so disturbing. That has been the policy of the party now, vote buying. To buy votes in order to lead this country. No wonder we are in what we are today. Once again, God bless B.J. Darocha, and may he rest peacefully in the bosom of the Lord. Because Darocha would never have allowed that if he had been alive. Never, ever, if he were to be the chairman of the party. But this is where we are reached. Vote buying. And vote buying leads to what? You have to look for money. You need money to buy votes. And that leads to what? That leads to stealing of state property, state money, state funds. And that has brought us to where we are economically today.
Dr. Nyaho Nyaho Tamakloe, you keep referencing B.J. Darocha, who actually did say the last time Alan Kyeremanten resigned from the party that he should not be let back in. Do you think it was a mistake for the NPP to embrace Alan Kyeremanten again after he first quit?
I remember very well when Alan resigned. I think it was in 2008 or so. I was then an ambassador. And I called BJ, and BJ was trying to explain to me. And I think BJ was right. He was right. He himself, left to him alone, he definitely was against his coming back into the party. But BJ brought conditions, which Alan applied, which Alan, agreed to. Other than that, he wouldn't have been accepted. The conditions that BJ brought, he accepted all of them. That's why he came back to the party. Well, BJ Darocha is a strong man, selfless person. I use the word selfless, a man who had nothing. Nothing. We've had such people in the party before. People who had nothing. Alan Kyeremanten had nothing. Kobby Mensah had nothing. Now look at those in authority now. And I have been saying, and I keep on saying, whoever takes over this country as a leader and fails to call these people to order, all those who have served in this government of Akufo-Addo, to account for what they have, and also the accounts, their physical accounts of monies or whatever it is that they have looted out of this country. If the new leader fails to do that, he will be my number one enemy. Because the monies that have been siphoned out of this country are so huge, and that has brought it into the state in which we are now.
Well, the last time he quit the party, he came back. Do you foresee that might happen again? Perhaps under new conditions, just like BJ Darocha laid out for him the last time?
No, I don't believe he will come back. Because if he even tries to come back, I personally will be surprised. It shows too that he is a man without principle. And I don't think he will do that. He's quite a sensible child. Now, secondly, I don't think the party itself will accept it.
Now, we know that there's going to be a press conference at 2 p.m. today. The party is going to be speaking. What do you anticipate they will have to say about all this?
To be frank with you, the leadership of the party at the moment is not strong. We don't have heavy-duty members who can speak their mind. They are all under the thumb of Akufo-Addo. All of them. And I say that with authority. So I'm not interested in what they are going to say. They will just come to sing the voice of Akufo-Addo. That's all.
Well, Dr. Nyaho Nyaho Tamakloe, I want to thank you for making the time to speak to us this morning. We appreciate it very much.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. Thank you also very much. Bye-bye.
Right, well, that's Dr. Nyaho Nyaho Tamakloe speaking to us there, giving his reactions to Alan's announcement. There's a lot more for us to do on this. So many thoughts to accumulate. We have Dr. Kobby Mensah joining us now. We know him. He's a political marketer, and he's been observing these events for some time now. Let's say good morning to him. Dr. Kobby Mensah, thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me. Good morning to everybody.
Yeah. All right. Now, the last time we talked about Alan, you actually quoted some studies you had done, which were, very much anticipating that he would win in November. This must be a shock to you.
Well, I think that I was not surprised, if I should put it that way, because when we had a conversation and he had issued a statement that he would come and tell the country the direction that he would take his political life, I suspected that perhaps something like that would come out, because we had also heard, especially those of us who are within the political circles, have heard about quite a number of disturbing issues, money is flying here and there. And so when he had said that he would meet his team, his family, to make a very concrete, decision on his political life, I thought that perhaps it would not get to November. He would actually quit. So it wasn't that much of a surprise, knowing what I knew.
Yeah. Let's talk about how he did it. Okay, so first he gave a statement after the Superdelegates Conference where he was quite clear about his misgivings. Then he announced another press conference to tell the world his plans. That got postponed. A new date was not set until the Occupy Jilobi House demonstrations were underway. On day 2, he then announced that he would have this presser on Monday. And in this presser, he leverages heavily on that demonstration. He identifies it as a lightning rod for the youth, which he correctly estimates to be about 55% of the electorate. He then affiliates himself to them and says he seeks to represent them as an independent on the movement for change. I mean, I'm sure there are permutations flying around in your head right now about how he went about this. How do you assess his approach and strategy?
Well, obviously, it tells you how his thought processes had been culminating to this particular period, especially knowing how active the young people had become in our political system, which had never happened before. Perhaps you would say that thanks to social media, because it's given out a lot of voices. I don't think that in the past, you and I can actually go to GBC and say, hey, I have something on my mind I want to say. They would not even look at your face because who are you? You could only have a political voice. Either you demonstrate in the street or you get onto the media houses. Otherwise, you would not be heard. Now, fast forward, we are now in a social media age where people can voice out their concerns of the political system, whether they are happy or not happy with it. They would tweet, they would do all kinds of things. It would go viral. Now, he realizes that this is perhaps a moment that he can seize. This is perhaps a moment that he can convince, especially the young people, that you do not necessarily have to be stuck with the duopoly. Of course, the MPP, the CPP and PNC are there, but they haven't really been attractive to these young people. And obviously, whenever young people think about political parties, I'm sure these two political parties are the ones they are thinking about. So he actually seizes the moment, not only the Occupy Jilobi House moment, but he understands that there's a new environment that perhaps he can puncture with his political ambition. And so he seizes that opportunity. I think that it's a long thought out processes, looking at the various conditions that perhaps he feels are very, very conducive for him to ride on, and that's exactly what he did.
Will it work? I mean, the youth have been clamoring for a third force for a long time. Is Alan that force?
I would be tempted to say that perhaps yes, but of course under certain conditions. Remember that I particularly have certain perceptions about Alan because when he was in full-time government, I say full-time because when he was dominant, in government, I was, of age. So I have a certain image about Alan. Not quite a number of young people, they may not have that kind of image about Alan because obviously those who were, as we call them, millennials, would have been too young to really perceive anything about him. And so the snippets of information that they have must be consolidated, and he could actually do that during the campaigns or his campaign period. So yes, they have heard his name. They have heard that he is one of the MPP top politicians. But who exactly is this person that is seeking to become a leader of this country? Perhaps that answer has to be given during the campaigns. So for me, he has a lot of work to do, because majority of the voters, especially those he's targeting, are those that may not have enough image about him. And that could be positive and that could be negative. Positive because then it means that certain negativities would not be, they would have a fresh idea, clean slate that he needs to fill, with his message, with his vision, with his behavior, with his attitude, and perhaps that could inure to his benefit. It's negative because if he's not able to really assert himself during the campaign period, then of course they will have very little to differentiate him from the MPP and NDC and the rest of the political parties. So it looks like an opportunity, but he needs to seize it and seize it well.
From how he's gone about things so far, do you think he's poised to seize that opportunity or not?
I suppose that, I don't know whether it was a strategy. The idea that he wasn't that dominant in this political regime, even when he became a minister, he spoke less. You hardly saw him in the grand style as you would with Baumia, for example. Obviously, he's a vice president. But the other ministers who had been quite dominant, and so people had been seeing him. Now, so it is difficult, I think, for most people to really see the political traits, about Alan. And that's why I think that perhaps it looks like he conducted himself well, within that period, so that he could really ride on as having the character, having the temperament, having the vision, and having the program. But they will all come together when the campaign starts. Clearly, and I'm very sure that you're going to have quite a lot of mudslinging from the opposing sides. I mean, people might start throwing in all sorts of, issues, against him, perhaps to show that you're not all saints as you try to portray yourself. And again, it would depend on his team, how they really absorb and respond to those attacks, in order that they can preserve that particular credibility that he wants to ride on. So it will be very interesting the way the campaign would go. But I think that for now, he's carried himself well. I mean, people have argued that, you were part of the government. Of course he was. Can he really decouple? Of course he can. Because even the vice president's team had tried to decouple. And I think that the many ways that people tend to associate you with a certain structure is your dominance in terms of their communication, in terms of how you defend that structure, in terms of how you are, visibly attached to it. I don't think that Alan, as compared to the other ministers, is really visibly attached to this government. Of course, the people who are within his area, his ministry, which is the trade ministry, and so you're talking about the specialist groups, the market people, who are actually doing import and export. Those trade areas, they would have quite a clear image about who he is and how he managed that particular department, and so they would have a lot to say. Would we hear from them, and would it be a good thing to hear? Perhaps so, or perhaps no. So these things are the dynamics that can actually inform the campaign for people to then consolidate their image about Alan Kyeremanten's possible leadership. And that could go both ways. It could go, as a good thing, or it could go as a bad thing, depending on how they manage it.
Right. We're talking to Dr. Kobby Mensah. He's a political marketer, and we're assessing Alan Kyeremanten's latest move, how it looks, how it plays out, and whether or not he can ride it to victory in 2024. Now, Dr. Mensah, it's true, and it's to Alan's credit that he hasn't ever been placed at the center of any, corruption scandal. He's sailed through his political career without any of those entanglements. But he's not completely blemish free. There are perceptions about him that are not positive. For example, he's seen as somebody who quits whenever the going gets tough. He is also seen by some as as the same person who was at a part of a government that has led us to the place we are today. A member of the economic management team, minister for trade, no less. There are some who see him as seeking to divorce himself from a problem he helped cause. How will he turn that perception around?
Right. Thank you, Kojo. I think that he needs very, very good communication team. Politics or political systems are part of the communicative, fields. Sometimes it depends on your ability to argue the position and how competent you are to persuade people with your argument. Now, let's take, for example, the argument that he quits whenever the going gets tough. What do you really mean by going gets tough? When people seem to have set up systems that are unfair, when people seem to set up frameworks that really determines the outcome already, is that the going get tough, or it's a deliberate attempt for people to derail your vision? I think that these things are the kind of things that his communication team must seek to correct, because it looks like there is a certain difficulty by the voters or by the citizens, and I don't blame them, to understand the nuances of political competition. Now, I was saying to somebody that politics is almost like a football. Almost everybody thinks that they understand it. You don't see people discussing medicine or anything related to health in the manner that you hear people discuss football and politics. A lot of people think that they have a fair understanding of political, practices and political, incidences, and so they discuss it and feel that they understand it. But you need a certain level of, critical insight, and I'm not downplaying anybody's, intelligence, but that is why it's a social science. What we see out is not the same as what is actually happening. And if you use the superdelegates example, you would understand that it is not necessarily things going tough. If you have a framework that says that select 5 people so that they go into November election, you have 2 elections. Now, that selection process is not a hierarchical process. It is a process that's supposed to say, we have your 5 people, not in any significant order, these are the names. When someone fails to do that and tries to hierarchically place those 5 in a manner that sends the signal as though somebody is the most preferred, you have prejudiced the preceding process. The process that is supposed to come after that. That is the November election. These are the nuances of unfairness in the political system. So that is not to say the going is getting tough. When you say the going is getting tough, you mean that maybe the political party MPP is being hounded by maybe an NDC in government. Their people are being arrested, and you have a certain leader who says, "Oh, I'm not part of it." Like what happened to Nkrumah and the CPP and the UGCC, when the accusation came that you organized protest, and some people say, "Oh, I wasn't part. It was Nkrumah." That one, you are saying that the going is getting tough. But not when people are deliberately putting certain structures in place in order that they can disadvantage you. That is not going to get tough. Again, in that first instance, he cited that the party must take measures to reduce or to eliminate the injustices, the intimidation method against my people. Otherwise, I will take a certain stand. Right. I will be loyal to my people and I will stand by them. He had repeated the same thing. For some people, especially from a political perspective, I think that is a principle in support of his supporters. I don't see it as, a certain flip-flopping. I see that someone has been consistent in his principle and his demand, that a certain fairer framework must be put in place. Otherwise, I am not endorsing this. You would need a certain knowledge form to explain to people. And so for him to be able to convince people that it is rather not the case that I chicken out when the difficulty or when it gets tough. It is a matter that I have to stay in principle to my beliefs, that I don't endorse anything that would jeopardize the future of this political party. And that is why I take these decisions. It would take his communicators to be able to argue this out and to persuade people so that he's not seen as being weak, as being checking out whenever the going gets tough. These are not going
There are some who might challenge this idea that he's standing on principle. If you recall, when he first burst onto the scene as a candidate in 2007, I think, his name was Alan Cash. That's the name the delegates gave to him, Alan Cash. And he did very well in those primaries. When he quit the first time, it was because he didn't win the primaries. The delegates didn't choose him as flag bearer. This time around, he's quitting again because he didn't perform as well as he had expected to in the superdelegates. And he blames the delegates for taking money to choose someone else or to choose other people. So is his grievance not really with the delegates? I mean, he cites leadership, but is his grievance not actually with the delegates? Because they are the ones who have rejected him twice.
Yeah, I mean, that perspective can be advanced. As I said, it depends on the competency of his communication team, political communication team, to really advance what they believe, is their perspective. And then, of course, whether that argument would be compelling enough to persuade, people. But I think that, yes, you would argue from that perspective, he had, over the period, cited intimidation, cited unfair structures. And that perhaps is what you would actually stand on as his reasons for quitting. Now, we can make inferences and say that, yes, you had said that, but we don't think that is the reality. But then that argument also means that we need to bring much more compelling evidences to support that particular, argument that you advance. Both ways, you need a compelling evidence to actually back up your argument. And that's why I think he would need a very solid communication team. He would need a very robust, materials to back their claims when the claims are against them. And I think, throughout the campaign, they would face some of these challenges, people attributing his resignations to factors that otherwise would not be in good position for his campaign. So he would have to really put in all the scenarios. I'm sure his campaign team perhaps would do that. They will put in all the scenarios. What about when people ask you why you resign every time there are some similar challenges? What about, when you were called this? What about this? His campaign team, I'm sure, must put in all these scenarios and find answers to them so that he could persuade people when they mount some of these debates, as you're actually putting across now.
Let's not forget, a member of his own team in the last superdelegates election, Hobson Adoye, actually admitted that they were also giving money to delegates, just that they didn't give as much as others did. So let me ask this to wrap up, okay? Do you think Alan would have quit the NPP if he had placed second in the superdelegates election?
I think the question rather is about the structures and the behavior and then the positioning or the of the party system. If he had thought that perhaps the structures were fairer, would he have actually left? Maybe if he was second, he probably could see that perhaps there was certain evidence that he could clinch it. And as I said, we had done polls that suggested that he would clinch, or he would he would fare better in November. And so maybe we could put many other factors, including his position in the superdelegate, to have convinced him that perhaps he needs to stay. The argument is also that what if he was first and still had his supporters had faced certain intimidations, etc. Would he have actually quit? All these are possible questions that we can ask. But I think that the reasons that he ascribed to why he quit is what we can hold him on, because we do not have any other things contrary, unless we have quite a strong argument to say that even if he had been first, he wouldn't have quit, or even if he had been second, he wouldn't have quit the party. So yes, there are so many ifs, but I think that the answer is he is the best person, or his team is the best person, so we can make inferences from that. I think if he had been second, he perhaps would have gone to the November election, but on condition that, again, his people were not intimidated, and he had felt that the machinery that was set in place was not going to any way influence the November election. I suspect that his campaign might have done the analysis and realized that, look, the machinery in place certainly would not allow him in November to become the flag bearer of the political party. As a result, as rational human beings, they took the decision to actually quit earlier. Because in my estimation, if he had gone to November and had lost, the idea that he had actually gone independent because he lost would have been much more stronger than now. Now we cannot be, because superdelegate is not a true reflection of November. So even if you mount the argument that he's quitting because he thought that he would lose, that argument is not stronger than if he had gone to lose the election and had come as independent.
I want to thank you for your time. Dr. Kobby Mensah is a political marketer.
Thank you for having me.
University of Ghana. We appreciate your time very much. Let's break down what we've heard so far. Okay, Dr. Nyaho Nyaho Tamakloe, Dr. Kobby Mensah had a lot to say, and I'll tell you what, Ray. I'll start with you if you like. We also have here Dr. Etse Sikanku, and he's spending some time with us, and we're glad to have you with us this morning. Yeah. Now, Etse was actually there when the announcement was made, so I'd love to pick. In fact, let's do that first, and then we'll break things down afterwards. How did it all play out? You were able to assess not just the man himself as he delivered the address, but the gathered crowd as well, and how they responded to it. Give me your impressions.
Yeah, good to be here with you both. Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah.
But yes, it's an important question because the atmosphere also communicates something. I think starting from the venue, you see, when you are doing programs like this, everything has a certain meaning. It has a certain implication. He chose Movenpick Hotel. It's a plush place. I guess he just wanted the quietude of that place and the kind of aura that it projects. I probably would have gone in for a more populist orientation where you get to meet the people, a more outdoor thing, something that connects you to the grassroots. But I guess there's going to be a campaign launch, and that might be an outdoor thing. So that was one. Then secondly, the kind of people who came, and then the number. I realized that he limited it to people who were around him, so you didn't really get the general public being there. If you look at the event, he said it was by invitation and all of that, but he made a plea for the youth. That was one consistent thing that you could see. So they were dressed in colors that I guess was synonymous to his new symbol and his new logo. A lot of young people, Ghana's most beautiful winner, I believe 2015, a former youth leader at KNUST, were at the forefront, and they were leading the chants and all of that. Then there was a section who were just typical supporters of him, people who have stayed with him for quite some time. But you would also notice that Honorable Boniface, former Ashanti Regional Minister S.K. Boafo, Ohene Nto, Mr. Yabuabi and Samoa, they were some of the more identifiable people who have stuck through to him. But I'm sure by now you've also realized that some MPs who used to be with him are no more. So I no more with his team. So I think that was the other thing that you could notice, that okay, there was something new about this. There wasn't the usual MPs who would have stuck with him and all of that. They weren't necessarily there. And this was a new face. I think this was the other thing that you'd see. And then the media were also present. And he has a new core team as well, director of comms, a new youth leader or youth commissioner, as he calls him, decides to describe himself. So this was the atmosphere, and they tried to energize him. One of the major things that you could see was Mrs. Kyerematen, Patricia, I believe is the name, who took on a more active role, a more vociferous role. I've never seen her as energized as she was on that day. I've never seen her as vocal and as active and as animated as she was yesterday. And so it definitely symbolized or signified a new face. She was very happy to support her spouse, and she actually led some of the chants. Like she would literally get up from her chair, turn around.
I've seen the videos on social media,
and then chant and all of that. So I was like, okay, that says something new. And they were very, very interested in supporting Mr. Kyerematen. So, in terms of the mood, you could see that a new page had been turned. Of course, the MPP does have to come to terms with it. You could see that they've moved on from it, and they were very, very, very decisive in making sure that they pursue this new path.
Very quickly before Ray comes in, you said it. He's making a play for the youth.
Yes.
Will he succeed? Will the youth identify with Alan Kyeremanten, the persona that we've known throughout his political career that spans decades? Is this a personality that the youth can get behind?
It's a very interesting question to consider, because there's a lot of things going on here. You see, let's make no mistake about this thing. There are quite a number of people in this country who are frustrated with the two parties, the NPP and the NDC. And if you look at the party in power, the incumbent, the MPP, they've admitted that things are not as they should be. We're going through some challenges, and let's not be mistaken about it. People are really having tough times. There are people who are not your normal political affiliated guys who were out there during the Fix the Country demonstration. We've seen prices escalate and all of that. I mean, like things are hard, like Ghanaians, you know, and so the youth who are very much affected disproportionately in a period of crisis feel these brands in terms of the financial stature, in terms of their economic power. They don't have it as much as adults, and so they are more likely to bear the brunt of this. And so it then opens up the possibility or the probability that they are more likely to lean to a certain narrative which speaks to their current issues or their current conditions. I think that Mr. Kyerematen has a lane that he can occupy within this terrain, and he made it known. Of course, youth, over 50% of our population in Ghana. I mean, globally, about 1 in 6 of the world's population now are young people between the ages of 18 to 24. And if you look at the political movements or protests that are happening, not just in Ghana, but across the world, young people are at the forefront of it. And so there's that likelihood or that probability that they are more likely to be enchanted or enthused about a candidate who seems to speak for them. So I think he can attract them because of what is happening currently.
Ray, we've heard a lot this morning. Dr. Nyaho Tamakloe saying Alan is not bold. He should name the people that he's disgruntled about, and then You've got Dr. Kobby Mensah saying Alan is standing on principle. He's, quitting the party because he believes that they have departed from the principles he stands for. I wonder, is the real Alan in there amongst all of this analysis? Are we all describing the same person?
There will be different perspectives about what he will do or what he cannot do. Of course, he's a campaign that he's supposed to be spearheading, but he will not do the campaign alone. He would have to rely on experienced people, and if everything is going according to plan, and he gets even 60% of the original Akufo supporters executing a campaign on his behalf, some of them are very old anyway.
Yeah.
It might be interesting how this will pan out. Of course, as for the members of parliament, what were you expecting of them? They were not going to let go of. I think they're not going to say tomorrow that I'm leaving my seat, crossing carpet, which automatically means that he's no longer MP. Then the seat becomes vacant. The MPP finds a candidate. The risk involved in having to now go through another election, they don't want to do that, except they're so sure of it. Of course, except they also are principled people who believe that this is the route to take no matter what happens.
It's not gonna happen.
But there's something he said. He's not asking MPs to leave. He said, stay with your party, vote for the MP. I'll work with that same MP in parliament because I believe that I can reach the consensus that's required in that particular parliament, regardless of how it goes. So what is going to happen is a lot of people not coming to declare support for him, but he will get people working for him in ways that will be useful. Nobody can pretend that Alan Kyerematen's first trial, 2024, may be the most successful. As I said before, the odds are against him. In fact, I wrote down when you were talking to the three qualitative factors that determine an election will go into a runoff and an incumbent will be defeated. Whether the incumbent or challenger is a new candidate, apart from former president, Mahama, all those go into the election, and he's not even an incumbent anyway. They are new candidates. 2, the popularity or charisma of the incumbent or the challenger here, and also the presence of a third party candidate. That third party candidate in Alan Kyeremanten is not a simple candidate. It's a very complex candidate from different sources, from different ends, from different appeals. And if he taps into a certain original Asante block, it becomes a bigger source or base for him to operate from.
Yeah. Because
if you heard those people that spoke, I don't know, but our correspondent in Kumasi spoke to some people. Almost 80% of the people were in support of he proceeding on that path.
Yeah.
In fact, even an MPP executive had declared that, well, even though I am an executive in the party, at this local level, I'm 100% in support of his quest. And I believe that it is Ghana first ahead of party. I was excited that I was hearing things like that because that's what we've been talking about all these years, Ghana first. Not necessarily party first. As to whether he's able to garner a certain grouping across the country will not only depend on the charisma, but the economic factors and other factors in states would actually matter. Because already others are yearning for it. So yes, he might not be Kwame Nkrumah. And I'm not sure if I have Kwame Nkrumah in the long while, let's be fair.
Since Kwame Nkrumah.
Yes, we might not be Kwame Nkrumah. But there are other factors that may work for him that are equally relevant in analyzing the environment within which this will operate.
I asked a question of Dr. Kobby Mensah. I don't know if we have time, but I thought that was the key question here. For anyone trying to question the motives of Alan, would he have quit if he had come second in the superdelegates vote?
Actually, the attempt to leave this race, those around him would say, go way back. All the attempts to make sure that the superdelegates was fair and that grouping do not hijack the process. All the attempts to say, why are we not taking 5? Why are we actually taking individuals and making it look like this is to be rank ordered? All of those were questions that were raised ahead of time. And if you were close to his team and other people around him, they had raised concerns, not openly, and that's never been his style. Maybe that's wrong, actually. Not complaining openly way ahead of time. But they had raised concerns about how fair or unfair the process was going to be. How even before this race started, Ministers of state were declaring support.
Which means he
A
probably
very
expected.
strange system, either way.
Does that not mean he probably expected to come second anyway? If even before the process he expected it to be unfair, did he not then expect to come second maybe?
Actually, nobody in Alan's team actually thought that he'll be first in the super delegate selection.
So would he have stayed if he had come second?
I don't think he would have actually.
All right. Well, listen, let's take some messages. There's more to do on the show. Etse, thank you so much.
Yes,
I
thank
said
you.
your name wrong. I
No,
apologize.
that's
Dr. Etse Sikanku. You'll be hearing more from him in the coming days.